Well, welcome to the second part of the weekend debate. And the reason that probably you're here, most people are expecting us to talk about buses. Oh, my goodness. Do you want to outline roughly what we're talking about first of all?
Yeah, I'm in dispute with the bus bannon over the use of a mobility scooter on the bus, Class 2. That must be emphasised, Class 2. Mr. Longworth retired, and I got in touch with Ian Bates, who had taken over from him, and he agreed to do a trial to see whether they could carry them. He admitted at the time that the regulations on the buses were 30 years out of date. Now, that trial was for a month, and it was extended to 2 months, and it eventually lasted 5 months, and there was never any problem whatsoever on the bus with my buggy, with hitting anybody else or getting up and down the ramp. And a bus driver said to me in the first week in January, he said, "Mr. Longworth's back, you won't be coming on here anymore." And within a week, I was pulled out of the bus queue. He didn't even have the decency to write to me. I was pulled out of the bus queue and told I was not allowed on the bus anymore. So I've been looking at it. In the beginning of January, they called the Act come into force. So I got in touch with the tribunal, and I'm now taking the bus bannon to the tribunal, which I think is on the 2nd of February, under the Equality Act. Now, I've done a few interviews about it, so I think a lot.
But your video is so fascinating because you were allowed to. You showed us that you went on board this thing, and it looked okay. But
the video was there. If you look on your site now, the video was there of me getting on and off the bus, and this is where it comes a bit. I don't know. There was figures given this week in Tynwald which were totally wrong. And I just looked down at the figures. Minister Baker said there was, he said 70,000 buses in England, right, and that only less than 20,000 of them were able to carry a mobility scooter, right. Well, I don't know where he got his figures from because they're totally wrong. The true figures are 32,000 buses in the UK, not 70,000. I just picked this up and I can tell you there, the number of buses there is 32. Stagecoach have 8,500, Arriva 1,335, First 5,200, which is a total of 15,000 people on buses where you can take a mobility scooter. Now, they don't want to count the London one because they say it's not the same as being here because you don't do any long journeys. But I've checked on it. The longest journey that they do in London is 23 miles, which is actually more than what an Alaman bus does, right? And they actually carry 8,600.
Let's balance this up by what the safety. This is all about safety, and you can't strap these things down because they have no straps in there. And there's reports that your thing went AWOL a bit or something, wobbled a bit, but there's no video to show it.
I mean, again, you see, this was read out by Mr. Hamer, who was in there then, and he said that my buggy moved 6 times on the bus, and it was a danger. And this week, Minister Baker was saying a bus thrown around a buggy thrown around the bus will injure people, and it just simply isn't true. I made a complaint to the president of Tynwald that the minister had misled Tynwald by saying that the buggy moved. So I didn't get anywhere with the president. So I got in touch with Longworth, Mr. Longworth, and I asked to see the CCTV because every bus journey has CCTV inside. And he said I wasn't entitled to see it. And I went to the communications committee.
So it existed by saying that, were they? Or was this? Well, I know where you're going on this, but did you get the impression it existed?
And they said I'm perfectly entitled to see it. So I got back onto Mr. Longworth again, and his answer was, "We've wiped the tapes." Now, do you wipe out the evidence?
Well, Paul, you spent some time in Tynwald, or Housekeys, where it was, on this subject. What do you think?
It's an issue I feel certainly needs addressing because no one should be discriminated from getting on and travelling by bus in any way, shape or form, and the equality legislation which has come through is there to enable that to be the case.
They claimed before that bus bannon didn't come under the Equality Act.
Yeah.
And not this week, last week, the law was changed in Tynwald, and it does cover them now.
Yes.
So, they have to go with it. And because of that, I had the first hearing on the 2nd of February. When that law was changed, I got back in touch with Bus Bannon, and I said, right, the law's been changed, I should be allowed on your bus. And his answer was, well, you're not. So now I'm taking out a second claim against them under the new law.
I mean, obviously, Chris Thomas, it's a matter very close to Chris's heart, and he's campaigning very strongly in order to have this issue addressed. I mean, the Minister talked about, I think it's UNECE 107, the Code of Carriage for Class 2 mobility scooters, and also citing that there isn't a restraining area fitted on the bus in order to restrain the device. And then they talk also about the load-bearing quality of the floor if the bus is unable to do it. But then strangely, I'm led to believe there's a bus operating, an ex-bus van and vehicle operating across, which is carrying Class 2
I mean, you can't make
mobility
stuff up
scooters.
almost. It does seem like it's
In fairness to the Minister, he did sort of say, well, maybe that's operate or doing it illegally. We don't know. And
but they're not doing it illegally. There's a code of practice thrown up with the government and the bus companies, and the 5 biggest bus companies all go under that code of practice. And Laurie Hooper, when he brought up the European
well, he made a very good point because the department are looking at changing the legislation to enable this, but then they're also said that going back to what I've just said is that the load-bearing quality of the flooring in the bus isn't able to support such devices. But then and Laurie Hooper raised a very interesting point because he said, well, just changing the legislation
doesn't change.
Yeah, you're saying, well, you can carry that now by changing legislation. Well, if the criteria applies that.
Right, that they say that load bearing is wrong. Right, an electric wheelchair weighs 175 kilograms. My buggy is 50 kilograms. So, which one is going to do the damage to the floor? Not my buggy.
No.
So can I ask you, Eric, why do you think that they aren't allowing you on? What could their reasons be? Because from the information that you've just given us in the timeline, it seems like you were perfectly safely using the buses until the return of Mr. Longworth.
Well, that's the only thing that changed. So
you got history. I mean, don't say anything to get us in trouble, but is there some bad blood there?
Not between me and him, no.
Right.
I know a couple of ministers that I haven't had a fallout with, You're
not known for your,
Well, if you go
tact.
back, if you go back, there was a argument with Mr. Malarkey over the courthouse in Ramsey, which got a bit savage at times. And if you go even further back, I was a shop steward, a union representative, and we beat the government on what we were claiming as well. I was working for the Border Authority and at that time a member of the Labour Party as well. And we beat the government, and as a punishment, the person who did the tribunal awarded the pay rise that we got backdated for a year and said it was because the government weren't negotiating properly. So I may not have a good name in the government.
I think what the issue is here, that with regard to mobility devices, obviously Eric's championing this on behalf of a lot of people.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I mean, where's everyone else screaming and ranting about this or whatever?
People don't do it. There's only some people will do it. I mean, I dare say you've asked people before to do an interview and they don't want to be on the television, don't want to be on the radio. I didn't want to be, but you do get used to it. And that's the way it is, and you're not going to get loads of people. But the one thing I can guarantee, I was downtown on a Friday, and it took me an hour to go up through the street on my buggy because people were stopping and talking. I went to get a takeout in the Chinese, and the fellow in there said, "You're the fellow on the buses, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, well, don't give up.
But
and that is what
you're in your class 2, by the way,
me.
because you got mobility, but you do need this thing. I mean, it's essential.
I've got the class 3 mobility, which I can go.
Is that the big ones?
Yeah.
The ones that go whizzy fast, like
they go 8 miles an hour.
Okay, I've seen some going a lot more than that, but yeah.
Well,
in
particular, some people do not use them properly.
And one is those very tiny little things. Those things almost fall over. Then the 2's a bit more juicy. I've seen it. I mean,
the 2 you can pick it up.
Yeah.
Like it's ailing weighs 50 kilogram, and there's no weight on them. And I don't see why they can continue saying this.
A lot of times spent on it. It's not wasted. What do you?
Yeah, and like, I mean, you should look at best UK practice where this is concerned. I think it's easiest to draw a line under it by just doing a feasibility study across and seeing how. I mean, obviously logistically at the moment with the way the borders are, but getting an independent report commissioned about by someone in the UK who
But why pay for something that we've already got? You've got the code of practice in England. Mm-hmm. Which can be transferred to here.
Is that not voluntary, Eric?
It is voluntary, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would have to remain voluntary.
Mm-hmm.
And there is times and places where you wouldn't be able to get on the bus. Mm-hmm. I accept that. Because one of the things that was happening, I was coming up regular on a Monday. I would go at 2 o'clock to get the bus back after I'd been to the NSC. And there was a girl there in a wheelchair, and I went over, I said, I've seen you here a couple of times, because you can only have one on the time. Mm-hmm. And I said, do you always come to go home at this time? She said, yes, Monday at 2 o'clock every week. And I said, right, I'll come at 2:30. And it's as simple as that. If you get there and there's somebody else in a wheelchair or on another scooter, then you'd have to wait for the next bus. So the only thing I would say is if they have it, just don't come try and get the last bus home, because you might not be able to get on.
Well, it's actually the same situation with pushchairs and like prams. So when I had a young children, and I was using the bus, I couldn't get on when there was another person with a pram on. It was as simple as that. Like you say, it just worked. You just worked it out.
But the Equality Act's going to sort this out, is it? I mean, isn't that there to?
But they are part of the Equality Act now.
But it's going back to what we were saying. I mean, if the bus company is saying that the load-bearing status of the floor on the bus is not suitable for this, then a change in legislation won't make the flooring suitable. So there's
this could go
there's
on
a
for a long
misconception somewhere here, and that needs addressing, to be honest.
Laurie Hooper put it very well, didn't he?
He did.
In the house, he'd obviously done his homework. And, well, I'd have to say that there's 2 MHKs that have been very good. Laurie Hooper's one, Chris Thomas is the other. And a lot of other MHKs I spoke to said, oh yeah, I'll find that out. And once you realise how difficult it was going to be, don't hear from them again.
Okay, well, we'll park that one. On this section, one thing just to talk about quickly, the promenade. Should we just have a quick word about that? The Ramsey Boy, I know.
I went down to Luke before I come here today. I went and drove down the prom. Okay, they've got bits of it open. Don't know really. You've got that strip down the middle where they're going to have to dig it up again to put horse trams lines in again. But there was listened to Minister Baker, and he was saying about Broadway being open. It was definitely going to be open on Thursday. Well, he's right. It is open.
Is it? Oh.
One way and all.
You can go up, can you?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was confused. I looked going down there the other day.
So it's not actually
I got
open.
very excited for Friday when I thought, and it wasn't open. Exactly, you're right.
Yeah.
So we haven't got another day.
They do seem to be moving on, but there was about, I looked when I was there today, there might be 10 people working there today. I know it's a weekend, but when I worked in the water board, if you had a rush job to do, we work weekends, Saturday, Sundays, all night. I know there's legislation now, you can't actually operate noisy machinery at night, so you can't run the thing 24 hours because it is by hotels, but it just seems a bit odd to me that, they're not working Saturdays and Sundays to get it done.
I think there's a wider question, isn't it? It sort of goes back, and there's other issues. It's all about the procurement process, and then the competency of the project management. Again, I've got no departmental membership or anything like this, and I'm in no way sort of towing the departmental line, but they have come up against unforeseen issues with things like old gas mains and infrastructure under the road. So it has took a long time, but that is not excusing the fact that a lot of people are now just getting to the point where they are utterly sick and tired of it.
One of the big things that they made out when they had to do the promenade, because they said, why do we have to do all this? Just plane it and re-tarmac it. And the answer they were given then was, there's big voids under the road, and it's letting the water into the guest houses down there. I've never seen a void. Without the voids, they could have just done the roadway. They didn't need to start digging the whole thing up. They could have just resurfaced the roadway. I know you've got gas mains, electric, water, and they have all been renewed when they're doing this, and probably does need doing. But, did you need to spend the amount of money doing all that when you could have just planed it and tarmacked it?
Yeah, I mean, I would really hope that lessons are going to be learned from it, because exactly as you said, Paul, this is about procurement and competency of project management, and that has all been shown to be a failure, really. It's been missed deadline after missed deadline, and I think that we need to know the details. I think there should be an inquiry.
Well, we had Nick Black in front of the committee, and you came in, didn't you, for a bit? That they didn't actually talk about the prom in general, which is a shame, because I was dying to hear how these dates.
Maybe you should invite him onto the programme, Paul.
Yeah,
they appointed somebody that's working with another department to come and run this scheme. And he's not there anymore. His name's Mr. Longworth.
Okay.
But, I mean, to sort of round this off, and this is, these high-level civil servants, they should be accountable, and they should be able to be interviewed publicly, because the public want to know. And the minister takes the bullet a lot of the time, but behind him there's a raft of civil servants who are making the decisions and on the day-to-day.
And Nick Black's come and go, hasn't he? He's had quite a few.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not signalling him.
I don't think the minister is to blame whatsoever.
No, he's got an impossible job.
He's took it on. And he's took a.
But he also gave out these deadlines, didn't he? I mean, it was going to be March, everything done, and Broadway was in September, October, November. Here we go again. I don't know.
Well, you can't blame the minister, really.
Shouldn't say anything, then maybe.
It should be like Nick Black, as you said, in the DOI. They're the ones that should have kept this going and got it done.
I mean, I think there's certainly shared responsibility, definitely. I wouldn't say you can't blame the minister at all. I think
very difficult to blame him when he's only taken on the job because of the movement of Chris Thomas, and then somebody else moved, so he ended up with the job.
It all goes back to procurement. That's the key in this. It's addressing the shortcomings in the procurement process.
Well, that did come up in that conference, the committee thing, and buying particularly. Was it the Mercedes buses seemed more expensive than buying other buses, back to buses for you?
Well,
why are we buying all these expensive buses?
I mean, I listened to that, and the absolute rubbish that now bus bannon are a main, what was the word?
Oh, they're now
main operator, and people can bring their buses here and get
that was
service.
Odd. That was odd.
Yeah, and
they're a
if you're talking there, if you're saying you can come over here with 50 holidaymakers on a coach trip, how are you going to get them around the island if you're putting a coach in to get repaired or serviced? I mean, where did that come from?
Well, we just wouldn't have the logistical setup to do it anyway,
Yeah,
what's
the word? They're not a reseller. They're a main dealer or something like that.
Again, it's and again, like I say, I'm not involved in any department. I would hazard a guess that they pay a premium price, although they again realise that premium price when they sell the buses on. So I think they sell them on when they've got under 100,000 miles on the clock, and by doing so, they manage to sort of realise the greatest return for the assets.
We have a young fleet, and we sell them off in good time, and they end up in other places. But anyway, that's this section. I think we'll let you do whatever, and please do join us again for more of the weekend debate.